Hello and welcome. I am the New Zealand Prepper and we have a lot to cover today. Right, so what's coming up in this video? We are going to be speaking about a beginning preparation strategy, and then we'll take a look into the bug out bag or hunting pack and what I have in mind, and then we're going to delve into Three Waters New Zealand and water in general around the globe, and we'll finish up with what that means in relation to the WEF-led carbon credit economy. So, settle in, grab a drink. Understand this video and most on my channel here cover a myriad of topics. None are particularly favourable towards the institutionalised tyrants we call our leaders and governments. This video aims to inform you and get you thinking about more than just where your next meal is coming from. It's not intended to incite or beget any violence or radical uprisings, but rather to get you to prepare for what is coming. Knowledge I impart is thoroughly researched, and what is said is from the result of my own research, is my opinion as I see it, however unvarnished, unrestrained, and out there you may think it is. If you're offended, too bad. I'm going to tell it as it is, and my opinions are not an attack on yours. I encourage you to do your own research, take what I say with a grain of salt, and form your own opinions on anything I talk about here. So, I also really enjoy intellectual feedback. If you have something to add or question, please do so in the comments. Okay, well then, let's get stuck in, shall we? If you're new here, if you like the video, hit like and subscribe, as I would like to grow this channel. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know it's a bit of a mix and match of topics with a general preparedness theme, although from time to time I will share some other written work by myself. But my point in saying this is that up to now it has been 90% information preparation, which, don't get me wrong, is vitally important, as you need to know what's going on in order to prepare for it, and I want to still provide bite-sized bits of information in every video. What I don't want to do is make long videos that people only see about 5 minutes of, and as such I will try to change the format up a bit, which should allow for more frequent videos, but videos with some practical components at the beginning and then some news components afterwards. Right, so let's talk about preparedness. If you are new to the topic, it is all about getting yourself prepared for any number or all number of emergencies that might occur. These could be natural disasters, economic collapse, the collapse of society and a major civil unrest, global war and supply chain collapse, perhaps the ongoing destruction and reworking of all systems, including the collapse of the food chain, resulting in mass starvation. Sounds like a lot, right? Like it's a big list of what ifs that could happen, and maybe you see, like I know some do, that say we feel some sense of security knowing we're positioned like most of the population and the government will have to do something. Well folks, that simply won't happen. Governments the world over are following the World Economic Forum's plan to restructure the world. If you don't know what I mean here, go and watch some of my other videos, because then you'll have an idea. So, then it is up to each of us to do our own part, our own way, to reduce the reliance on the systems, as it will not be there when any of these SHTF disasters occur. I mean, can you go to the supermarket with your debit or credit card during a major earthquake where the power is out? Do the water pumps work? So then what first? I would say get to 3 weeks food supply at home as soon as possible. This is food supply that does not need power to be stored. And don't misunderstand me. If you have a year's worth of frozen meat, that's great, but shouldn't you also have either a hybrid off-grid solar setup, a generator, or the means and knowledge to preserve that food by canning, smoking, or curing in the event that happens that the power is cut off? Next, but equally important, if not first and foremost, is water. Think about this carefully. If there is no power or an earthquake in your local area, pipes will be broken, your supply of water will be impacted. You can only last a couple of days without water. It is vital. So you need to study and find your local fresh water source. Grab, like I have, a few hundred litres of water for that initial part, then know where to go to get drinkable fresh water. If you're lucky, like I am, there is a surprisingly high water table where you live, and a shallow well and a hand pump is a viable option. On that front, you will still need water filtration to remove undesirables from your water, and I would go as far as to say you should filter your water, then boil it to be safer. Things like the life straw are useful for filtration, but they're limited in capacity, and as such you need another water filtration strategy. Here in New Zealand, I recommend looking into systems that will provide almost indefinite water. I suggest looking to the way rural households manage drinking water, ones where they are off the grid. There are good systems available. Most include rainwater, bore water, well water, paired with a gravity filtration that occurs after UV treatment. With that said, being the ideal setup, any and all beginning preparations should be commenced as a matter of urgency. Since we do not know how long until SHTF will occur, and whether it will be bottled water stored in a well implemented or full drinkable filtered and UV treated rainwater setup, having any of these is better than none. For complete beginners, these things can be as simple as adding a few extra canned foods and bottled water items to your weekly shop. A few 10 kg bags of rice, a way to cook it without power or reticulated gas such as a camp cooker or wood stove should be looked at seriously, but something as simple as having a barbecue with a burner a pot can sit on and 2 extra bottles of LPG will suffice to start. Even a wood barbecue with extra wood, if you have one of those freestanding inside fireplaces with the vents on the top that allow you for cooking things, I envy you, as dual purpose heating and cooking is great efficiency. Next, we should think about shelter, fire and security. And for this, to keep things interesting, we're going to talk about bug out bags. If you had a fire or an earthquake, what would you grab if you had to leave in a hurry? What we're going to do today is attempt to go through what's in my bug out bag, which is also my hunting pack. So I have items that I have used for hunting purposes, and I know they will work because if you have gear, it's no use if you don't know how it works or how to use it, right? Now, my bug out bag or hunting pack is likely going to be bigger than most people's and is probably quite a bit of overkill. And people can say it's too heavy, but the reason it's bigger is because I'm bigger. I'm well over 2 meters tall, currently 130 kilos, admittedly. I should be probably more like 115, and I'm working on that. But still, larger size means more calorific intake, larger clothes, more water, etc. So prepare for your size and strength. There are ultralight options out there, and I encourage you to do your research. Put simply, if you can't walk, let's say 7 or 8 kilometers while wearing your pack, and then stop and set it up for camping at the end of that, it's probably too heavy for you. But I've tested mine and I know I can do that. Now, this is not a paid promotion. I bought these things by myself, for myself, with my own money. Nothing has been gifted to me, so I can say what I damn well like about what I have here. And if it didn't work, I'll tell you, there are things you will come across in your preparedness journey. Things that seemed good in theory, but in practice were consumer junk. We'll make a start and let's see how far we get. Alright, so I went through all of that one by one and took everything out, and guess what? That was way too long. So I'm going to attempt to just go through a bit slower with a few of these things, just as a general, what should you put in a bug out bag or a hunting pack or whatever, right? First up, cooking equipment. What you need to cook, and the gas to do so. Not a bad idea to have a second backup of that, especially if it has a wood-fired system. Water storage. Yeah, I keep 4.5 litres in my pack. Food kits that include freeze-dried food, and don't forget about breakfast and lunch as well, not just your dinners, right? Sleeping pad, very useful to have. Sleeping bag. And a tent. Hey Simba, having fun there, boy? Where's my tent going? There we are. Tent. Your own clothing. Your weather gear. Stuff for bushcrafting, as in some of these things. Yep. Stuff for being used to go to the bathroom with. Medical kits, medical supplies. Cutlery and utensils. Good strong knives, some specifically for skinning animals, some for bushcrafting. Torches, sources of light. Gloves, because it gets pretty cold if you're up in the hills in the winter. Another source of camp cookers. I'm a firm believer of 2 is 1 and 1 is none, so I tend to get double on most things. Not that I would always use double. What else do we have? A source of water purification. And I'm making a bit of a mess of this, but we'll just go as we go. It's raining somewhere, there we go. Water purification device. Yep. Navigation. Communication. 2 separate things. This one has a PLB, personal locator beacon, on it for use in these civilized times. This one will tell you anywhere you want to be, where you are and where you can go in the world without needing any sort of subscription. So that's very useful. It just takes AA batteries as well, so also very good. Now, one thing I didn't cover yet, that I will, is this. I keep this in my pack as well. It is a power brick, or whatever you call it. This is 20,000 mAh, so you can, or I can, recharge my phone 5 times with that, which is useful. Generally, that's about it. Oh, we've got some binoculars, of course. Got to have some binos to be able to see some people. And of course, my hunting apparatus or my bow. That should be a bit more condensed, but yes. So there's some stuff that I've got in my hunting pack slash bug out bag. Alright, let's get back into the rest of it then. Okay, let's get back into it. Moving on. Well, I hope that has given you all some ideas, and I do hope you look to build your own bug out bag, or emergency bag, or go bag, or hunting bag, or whatever you call it. Because when shit does hit the fan, you'll be glad you had it to grab as you go. Moving on, I wanted to touch on some of the practical implementation we have seen announced here in New Zealand over the past week or so. And yes, it seems all but certain this current tyrannical ruling class, I mean the New Zealand government, seems hell-bent on pushing their ideas through while they have this sole majority. Apparently, despite the protests currently happening around the country, and as we have seen, even members of their own party that don't agree are apparently bullied and pushed out. But what I wanted to draw your attention to was the piece of media spin they put on an article that was on NewsHub earlier this week. It said the average family in Taranaki uses an average of 288 litres of water a day compared to 240 odd in other parts of the country. And in line with new Three Waters legislation, or regulation rather, that they had begun efforts to add water meters to all residential houses there. Now, I grew up in Taranaki. The water there is rather abundant, rainfall is plentiful, and the climate is generally agreeable to most. But as we suspected, Three Waters' centralisation of power over your drinking waste and stormwater was not only another tax, but another way for the tyrant government to increase its fast-growing power and control to lessen your rights and ability to live free. So the media lie here is the assertion that all populations, regardless of size, density, number of farms, horticulture in the area, should use the same amount of water, right? But let's take Auckland. It has a lot of businesses and a large population. It uses significantly more water than Taranaki does, but per household its consumption is less, and there are more people to split the usage amongst, and Taranaki has more farms, more horticulture, and less people. So the comparison is nonsensical. But this is just more of the government's environmental social governance coming through from the World Economic Forum. Now, wherever you are in the country or in the world, I'm sure you're starting to see this take hold too. And specifically here in New Zealand, get ready for water meters everywhere so that everyone is forced to pay for water. That is, except other countries who can buy land and then bottle millions upon millions of litres of water from underground aquifers and blue springs and only pay peanuts for it. In fact, let's look at that. Kiwi Blue and two other companies, which are mostly overseas owned, take around 6.9 million litres of water a day from the Blue Springs near Putaruru, which is in the Waikato triangulated route between Tauranga, Hamilton and Auckland. 6.9 million litres a day, most of it for bottling and shipping overseas. That's 2,518,500,000 litres of water a year. For this, they pay the local council 50 grand, 50,000 New Zealand dollars. That's what? It is roughly 20 cents per 100,000 litres. Think of that, and then remember how much you pay for bottled water at a supermarket. Now understand, they are trying to say you use too much water and need a meter on your house so that you get a new bill for water each year. And what is not being taken into consideration, and what anyone with half a brain should be able to recognize, when you export water overseas from one aquifer, it's then drunk. It becomes wastewater and is expelled or treated or whatever they do with it where it is finally consumed. It becomes water for that nearest landmass. So for years, populations overseas have been selling their groundwater to other places overseas, and of course most of it inevitably goes to where the populations are largest and can use it, which would be what? China and India mostly, right? Well, what do you think the result of this is going to be long term? Exactly what we are seeing. I mean, it's not hard to see, right? What did you think caused all those floods in China recently that destroyed their crops? Of course, the water is expelled locally and then it's part of that region's water and it falls as rainfall. Places that would usually have had that water locked underground in its aquifers have less of it evaporated, and then subsequently less falls there as rainfall, causing a feedback loop. This is where we get successive droughts in the Waikato here in New Zealand because the water is being stolen by companies like Coca-Cola, Now, I haven't looked into the situation in America where you guys are having a large drought, but Australia had some large floods recently too. Now, the water bottling companies that take from the Blue Springs in Putaruru, one of them is around 10% Australian owned. I'd wager a lot of our water finds its way into the markets there in Australia too. The thing here is that, okay, now we're seeing globalization's ugly effects set in, and when the rainfall occurs, that was absolutely the foreseeable consequence of global water redistribution for profit. There is not the infrastructure required to capture it and reuse it. Instead, it's cheaper to keep stealing it from other parts of the world and shipping it across, which will result in more drought and flood. Then they have the gall to say it's climate change. No. It's multinational companies' water mismanagement and redistribution that's causing this mess. It is the direct result of globalization. Anyway, that's my view on what's happening there. In earlier times in human history, if there was not enough water in one place to support a population of the size needed, then people had to move to where the water is. Now, we're moving water to where the people are because governments and companies treat people like a commodity to be farmed and taxed and manipulated to its own nefarious misgivings. And thus we get to the crux of today's topics and situation. You now know a bit more about the state of water in the world. You've heard the news about heat waves that followed floods. You've heard that America and Europe are crying out for water and that China had massive floods only months ago and is now in a drought. But have you heard about what's coming next? Have you heard about your carbon rights and the forthcoming carbon economy? In the Netherlands they have. Now, I'm not going to go too far in depth on this as this video is already very long, but what you need to know is where this is leading. This is leading us to a world of tomorrow where you will not spend money on whatever you like. Yes, I believe there will still be money, but also you won't just have the cost of the product to consider, but also its carbon cost. You will be allocated a carbon allowance. Yes, allowance like a child. Things like beef will be available, but a piece of steak may cost you half of your carbon allowance, as well as the smart contract enabled cryptocurrency of your nation. These smart contracts will mean once you've exceeded your carbon allowance, they'll stop working. Terrifying, isn't it? You may still have money to spend but won't be able to because you're not allowed to due to excessive regulation designed to keep you in your pen like sheep locked in a paddock with no grass, only to see grass growing in the next paddock but you not being able to get to it until the farmer opens the gate. And to tie this in with today's theme, you can imagine now how those smart water meters encompassed with those smart power meters are going to be used in the upcoming carbon economy, because of course there will be a shut-off valve or mechanism installed in them so they can cut water or power to your place only if you haven't paid for it or if you have used up all of your carbon rights for that time. As more information becomes available about this, I will continue to track it. But that said, our generation is the one that's going to have to deal with this. Let me know in the comments what you think should be done. If you liked the video, hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And get going on your preps, people, because you don't have as much time as we think we do, and these things are changing shockingly fast. I will see you all in the next video.